Welcome back to Switched to Linux. Well, today I want to spend a little bit of time just briefly talking about why am I not a Linux elitist? Now, what do I mean by a Linux elitist? Well, and I don't use the term in a derogatory manner. I use the term because in the Linux world, what I have observed is that there's a lot of people that if you're not 100% Linux, just think you don't know anything at all and don't care. And a Linux elitist, the way I'm going to define it, is Linux is your hobby. Linux is what you do for fun. Linux is the thing that you want to learn absolutely everything about it, like any good hobby is. And I'm not knocking that at all. Everyone has different hobbies. Everyone has different things you want to do. For an elitist, though, Linux is the core purpose. And so what ends up happening is if you're in the Linux world, but you're not all about Linux, oftentimes you are looked down upon. And the reason I want to do this video is there's been some people in the Linux world who are very knowledgeable people that I respect greatly that have criticized me, not directly, but indirectly, but I do have a fairly big following, and the people who follow me follow these other people as well, and I hear about it. You know, as I said in a previous video this year, I gave up caring what people thought of me long ago. And what I've told people, whether it be an email or comments, don't hold that against anybody. Keep learning from whom you need to learn from. I don't care. It's not my intention. It's not my purpose. I don't want to turn my whole life about Linux. I don't want my whole life to be about a computer. Life is worth so much more than that. That's what I want to say. So why am I not a Linux elitist? As I'm defining a Linux elitist as being somebody whose Linux is their hobby. Linux is the core aspect of their life. Linux is the core reason they live and breathe in the morning. And if that's you, I don't care. That's awesome. We need those people who understand how the systems work at a much deeper, much more fundamental level. And that's okay. But the reason I'm not one of those people, and I listed a few reasons here. Number one, I have other hobbies. I like being outside. That's actually why we have an outdoor philosophy series, which used to be on the Linux channel and is now on one of my other channels. Right now, we're going through a book on education and education philosophies. I'll go ahead and have a link to that playlist. That is on another channel, but I still do get outdoors a few times a week, even in the winter. I love coming to these parks. I love coming around. I visit several different parks. It's one of the hobbies, just to be outside, just to enjoy taking a walk in the woods, to enjoy getting away from the desk and away from the office. My goals are not to define the fine details in Linux. So why do I have a channel called Switched to Linux? Very simply because Linux not only is an operating system, it's also a philosophy. Outside of the norm, outside of what everyone else does necessarily. And it's not that I use it because it's outside the norm, it's because it's an option. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But there are things that I want to do that are not related to Linux. I do a lot of interesting things, and I've been put this question to my Patreon and Think Life Media supporters this week about where should I put some of these other things, because I don't want to run another channel. And many of them agreed, throw them on Switch to Linux. So you'll see a few videos related to some of those other projects I have going on, because I think that they're interesting and other people would find them interesting. But the first reason why I'm not a Linux elitist is because my hobbies lay in other places, not just computer systems. Does that mean I don't know a lot? Oh, I know a lot more than I may tip my hat to. But I make sure that my channel is friendly to the new user, gives people a reason to look at what I'm doing and say, maybe I can try that too. And a lot of people have said it's helped tremendously in what they do. The second purpose is, the second reason I'm not a Linux elitist is that my purposes are not just to convert the whole world to Linux, but to get people to think outside the box. So outside the box in how you live, outside the box in how you eat, outside the box in how you do your computing, outside the box in how to do your projects and your hobbies. These are what is important. I want to give people options and alert them to the world. Two factors there. There are a lot of issues in our world. We are on this slippery slope that if we just buy into the smartphones, we buy into the social media, we buy into the products, we buy into this, buy into that, we are giving up a lot of ourselves. We're giving up a lot of our choices, a lot of our options, a lot of the things that we would otherwise look at and not think about. I want to bring those to the light. So if you want to keep using your social media, if you want to keep using your Windows, if you want to keep using the apps that you're using, as long as you're doing it knowing the risks, that's one of my purposes of this channel. Secondly, I want to give you the options. How can you de-Googlify your life? How can you get your hobbies and your work done? This is why I did this channel. It wasn't to teach everybody to be a Linux elitist and care nothing about anything except to get an obscure operating system working on your computer. It's beyond that. It's how to get real work done with alternative systems. This is why I talk so much about the books I write. Why? Because that's one of my #1 hobbies. I write books. I've always wanted to be an author. And right now I have 4 published books. The 5th one is coming out very shortly, and the 6th one after that, and I have a pile more ideas. And I write them and produce them completely on Linux. It's to give people those options. Now, the last reason is I want to learn and teach people what is real in the world of Linux and options. In other words, I'm just trying to decipher my notes real briefly. I don't want to get into the fine details of Linux. I want to teach an overview, whet your appetite, because I do have a background in education and in teaching. You see, if you want to talk, for example, about chemistry, and you come in and ask a basic question, I could completely blow you away with advanced knowledge of the Joule-Thomson coefficient if you want. You really want to know why when you pop a CO2 tank it gets cold in your hand? That's called the Joule-Thomson coefficient. Pretty advanced stuff. Do you know how a Grignard reaction works? How about a Grignard reaction at high altitude? See, I can get into really deep stuff on a lot of things. But when it comes down to teaching the basics and teaching the fundamentals, we don't jump in there and express our knowledge to the whole world so the whole world looks at us and goes, oh, you're so awesome. No, that's arrogant. It really is. You get in there and you give people enough to whet their appetite, enough to get them curious and looking and learning what else you can do, what other options. If I jumped right on in and said, let's install Arch and got into all the terminal, I would win the audience of a lot of the people who already know how to do that, but I completely tune out all the people that I'm focused on. What did Jesus say? It is not the healthy who need the physician, but the sick. Okay, I want to focus this channel towards helping people who don't know how to do advanced things. Get them booting an operating system in Linux so they can poke around in that on an elementary level, so you can learn the basics. And then when you're ready, you'll get into a terminal. When you're ready, you'll get into an Arch system. When you're ready, you'll do something more advanced. And then when you're ready, I'll pass you on to the people who are more passionate about all those types of things. And that's cool. All right. What I want to do, though, is I want to take all the different hobbies and all the different choices, the things that I do and that I take an interest in that are not necessarily computer related, and learn how to do them in Linux instead of relying on Windows or on Mac. In other words, I want to use Linux as a worker, not an elitist. I want to learn how can I get my day job done with an alternative operating system, not convert my entire life into bash scripts and terminals and all these other things. Are those good? Absolutely. And when you're ready for it, you can do that. But the task of this channel is to teach the basic users, basic computer users, how to not be intimidated by going into a Linux system and learning how to do something. That's what my task is. That's what my goal is. That's why I teach more on the basic level rather than the advanced level. I want to teach people to use Linux as a basic worker, not convert the world into terminal-based Linux guys who are complete hobbyists and do nothing but poke around on their computer. Life is bigger than that. And I encourage you, get out into the world and ask yourself what is important in your life and how can you get those things done on a Linux computer system as opposed to the proprietary systems. Or do you even want to? But at least learning the options is a good thing. Something to think about. That's why I'm not a Linux elitist. Let me know your thoughts and comments about this down below. You can help support the channel. Have a look at the links above me or in the description down below. You can follow along on the social sites if you want to be informed as to when we release new videos. Thanks for coming along, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.